I had a student last night sitting right over here in an institute class giving a personal experience, and he says, I had a need, I was looking for something, I wanted an answer, and I thought of what Brother Fotheringham had said about hearing a voice, and I kind of wanted to hear a voice. And that deeply concerned me. And I guess that's why you're going to be very careful about sharing spectacular experiences, because they're rare, and you start looking for that. I've had 2 or 3. I'm going to share a couple here even, and I'm scared for a number of reasons. One is because a response like that. President Kimball said, the burning bushes, the Mount Sinai's, the Curtin Temple area experiences, they're real. But if we keep looking for those, we'll miss the constant flow of revelation that comes to us all the time. Most of the time I'm questioning, it's like, was that the Spirit or not? I have ideas and I wonder if that's the Spirit or not. I feel get a lot of witnesses when I read the scriptures, and it becomes exciting and enlightening to my mind. My experience is more the Alma 32 experiences than the spectacular. Bringing up the spectacular has a problem. That being said, I want to share this because I think it's valuable. I think it'll help people, and I hope I'm not out of line. Elder Neal A. Maxwell one time said, when he was going through his illness, and I'm not going to do this justice, but it was something like this. He said, the Spirit gave me 12 words. And it was something to the effect that I gave you leukemia that you may be able to speak with authenticity. It was something like that. And I know he was telling the truth. One, because he was going to pretty soon die, and you don't go public in general conference with something that's not true. And the other thing is that when you hear the voice of the Lord, you count the words. If there's precious, it's like, wow, that's pretty important. And I heard, like I mentioned in my first video, I heard the Lord very clearly say, he died a righteous man, referring to Joseph Smith. But I told my student last night, I said, you gotta be careful. I never once had a spectacular experience when I was looking for it. It was the furthest thing from my mind. I was thinking about something else, and the Lord in his time and his way, I just doubt if you're looking for a voice, you'll ever get it. Maybe you will. But I think that's not been my approach, and not been my desire, and it's not been conjured up by me looking for something like that. But I want to share with you an experience that I had, because it ties really well into this picture. It ties in really well. First of all, when I was like 17 or 18, my brother went on a mission to Sweden. Our prophet was saying every worthy young man should serve a mission. I intended to serve a mission. I did not question whether the church was true. To me, it was so obvious in so many ways. It had answers. I'll not pursue that anymore, but to me it was obviously true. But I hadn't ever read the Book of Mormon. And I thought, well, I can't go on a mission and hand Mrs. Brown a Book of Mormon and say, please read this. If any one of them were to say, well, have you read it? And I'd have to say no, that didn't work. And so I read the Book of Mormon for one reason. It was out of fear of embarrassment. I didn't want to be embarrassed. I wasn't asking God if it was true. It seemed true to me. So I read the book. It took me a long time. I used cassette tapes at times just to kind of take me through and get me through the reading, because I'm a very poor reader, especially back then. But I read and read and read. It took me about a year, and I remember the last chapter, I was in Moroni chapter 10. I was sitting up in my room in Ephraim, Utah, on my bed, and I get to Moroni chapter 10, and my thought was, cool, could I finish the book? Gonna be done. One of the few books I'd ever read, I'd finished it, or was finishing it. And I got to Moroni chapter 10, verse 3 and 4, where it says, if you'll read these things and ask God if it is true, he'll tell you it's true. It's a verse that I had helped or learned in seminary. I'm very familiar with it. It wasn't a new idea to me, but when I got to that verse, I was walloped. I was walloped by the Spirit. It was whoosh. From head to foot, I felt something spiritually, physically. The only way I can describe it is if I had my eyes closed and someone picked me up by the back of the neck and grabbed me and put me in a warm pool of water and pulled me out and said, "Did you feel that?" The answer is yes, I did. In fact, it wasn't until a week or two later I was sharing that with a friend and I went, "Oh, I have a testimony." That's a dramatic experience. It's not what everybody has. Some people have, like Elder Bednar says, it's like the sun rising a little at a time. I think that's probably more common. But some of us have a moment, and I had that moment. And would not suggest go asking for the moment. I would suggest basically pray, and the Lord will reveal to you the way the Lord wants to reveal to you. But about a year later, I got a call on a mission to go to Melbourne, Australia, and it was time to go to the temple. And back then, they didn't tell you anything about temple. There was no temple prep at all. So I was going, and I fasted that day. I wanted another experience. I was looking for what I'm telling people don't do, and I was. And I went to the Manti Temple. The first thing I noticed that everybody there was old. They all seemed so old. I went through the various ordinances, and one of the things that hit me was all the clothing was quite, number one, warm, and number two, there's a lot. The other thing was the symbolism, a lot of symbolism. I didn't know that we did that much symbolism, and it was kind of stressing me out. And I'm looking around, it all seemed kind of strange to me. We were in one place where we were kind of standing there praying, and I was with the group that was praying, and I passed out. And the next thing I know, I'm being woken up with smelling salts. And then I wasn't too embarrassed. It was just weird. And we went down in the cafeteria and had some food there, which was kind of bland. I think they didn't put any salt in any of it for the older people, but it wasn't that great. I'm sitting there by the door, and I'm eating with my mom and my dad, and I'm just thinking, what on earth was that? And an old elderly lady walked up to me. I'm sitting there, and she said, "Sonny, the man who caught you when he passed out as a sealer in the temple, had you died, he could have raised you from the dead." And I was like, thank you. It didn't help. So I was off. And the only thing I had is, I know the church is true, but what on earth was that? So then I determined, because I had a foreign mission and had 2 months to get shots and everything and visas in order, I determined to go back to the temple once a week just to regain my balance. And I went, I think I was on evenings, as I recall, and I was there, and it got a little easier because it was kind of cute to the people in the temple that this young man would return, because I was definitely a different age. And I started to go away feeling like I was doing my duty, like I'd done home teaching and kind of felt good about the service. Then one night I'm there, I think it was a weekday night, and I'm in the Manti Temple, and I find myself in the celestial room, and I'm all alone. And I think I'm gonna snoop around, just to look around. And I see over at the wall, further that way, that there are some steps that go to a landing that go into a room, and the door was open for the room. And so I walked up the steps and I looked in the room. It was a beautiful blue room with an altar there. It was clear to me that that was for sealings. And when I was looking at that, I heard 7 words. And the words were this: "This is what it is all about." I wasn't sure what that meant, but I felt really good, and I thought, okay, when you get married, you'll understand that all this temple stuff is about that sealing. I knew it'd be eternal marriages, but I couldn't quite articulate what it meant, but I felt good, and I had quite a witness. They say you don't, because Moroni said you receive no witness till after the trial of your faith. Well, I had a trial, and I received a witness, and I know that temple marriage is what it is all about. So I went on my mission. I came home, went to seminary, went to institute, done with seminary, graduated from seminary, went to institute, ended up teaching seminary, and then it was years, probably 8 or 9 years after that experience, when a teacher, a really good teacher, said, "Let me explain to you the promises made to Abraham, which are basically land for eternity and seed that would continue in this world and in the world to come." And then D&C 49, it basically says marriage is ordained of God so that it will answer the earth's creation. The reason I created the earth was for marriage. The promises made to the fathers, one of the first things Moroni mentions to Joseph Smith, 17 years old. There's no clue. There's no way he has a clue that that is the purpose to life. But as it started to come doctrinally to me, I can now teach that that is what it's all about. It is why. It is why to every significant question we have. So up here, although this is really from section 2, this here, this is how. The plan by definition is how. This is how our God is going to save us. This is why. This is what everything is for. Why we had a creation and a fall. Why there was a Jesus Christ and atonement. Why there was a restoration of the gospel or the gathering. Why we have basketball rims in our chapels. Why we have the strength of youth. Why should we be morally clean? Why should we be kind? All of that is so that we can eventually, one, become like Christ and end up with eternal seed and eternal land, living with our God, being like Him. I was told when I was 19 that that's what it's all about. Scripturally, it's really, really right. It's the capstone of our religion, or the capstone of the temple, is that sealing ordinance. And so I testify that I really do know. And that's why I didn't hesitate too much to add that to the picture. One is for my students, you need to have kind of the destination. But it's not how, it's why. And I know it's true. I know it's true. Now, I've had 3 spectacular experiences in a life. I'm 62 years old. I think I've been amazingly blessed. I think if you're looking for that, I think God may trust you enough you may not need something like that. Just a little here and a little there is probably more what we need. But now and then we have experiences. And I like when people say they know if they tell me how they know. And that's how I know. When I say I know, I really do know. Thank you. For more on this, go to regardingtheplan.com. Thank you.